You've explored how to construct equations and then deconstruct equations or solve them. So now let's look at equations with variables on both sides. Let's look at a problem in context or an application problem to help us explore this. You have $60 and your sister has $120. You are saving $7 per week and your sister is saving $5 per week. How many weeks will it take for you to have the same amount of money saved? And you probably want to know when you'll have more money than your sister, but let's start with when you'll have an equal amount. So we're going to start with our variable terms, so 7W and 5W. So the first thing we're going to do is use our properties of equality. So we're going to subtract 5W from both sides. Notice that I'm subtracting 5W, and that way my variable term will still be positive. And this will really help when you're solving inequalities later on. Notice that 5W minus 5W is 0. I'm not going to write that down, but that allows us to have 120 alone. So think about when this equation was constructed. 2 times W happened first, and then 60 was added. So the first thing we want to do is subtract 60 from both sides. And there's an implied positive in front of that 60, so we're going to subtract 60 from both sides. And that gives us 2W is equal to 60, and then we'll divide both sides by 2. So W is equal to 30. So that means that in 30 weeks, you'll have the same amount of money as your sister. So in math, we like to call this whoop-wah, word problem, word answer. In 30 weeks, your sister and you will have the same amount of money saved. So by writing this sentence, we are able to understand the problem a little bit better. Sometimes you'll need to simplify an equation first. Simplifying means that we will distribute or combine like terms, or maybe both of those things. So let's start by simplifying the left side. So we're going to distribute the 6. So we have 6 times 5m is 30m, and 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And on this side, we're going to simplify this expression. 1/3 times 24m, or 24m divided by 3 is 8m. And 1/3 times 12 is 4. So let's look at our variable terms. Remember, there's an implied positive here, so the opposite of that is subtracting 8m from both sides. So 22m minus 18 is equal to 4. And then think about the construction of this equation. First, you multiplied 22 by m and then subtracted 18. So the reverse order will be adding 18m to both sides. And we have 22m is equal to 22. And we'll divide both sides by 22, and m is equal to 1. And notice that my equation equal signs are all lined up so that I can keep the equation balanced. Sometimes there are many ways to solve an equation, and that's what makes math really exciting. There are multiple ways to get to the same answer. So let's try a couple of different methods. Remember that there's a 1 in front of this x, so this is 1/2 x plus 1 is equal to 1/4 x minus 6. So I'm going to start with my variable term. I'm going to subtract 1/4 x from both sides. And think about money. If I have 50 cents minus a quarter, that gives me a quarter. So I have 1/4 x plus 1 is equal to negative 6. And then I will subtract 1 from both sides. And I have 1/4 x is equal to negative 7. Now I want to use my inverse property. What's the inverse of 1/4? Well, that would be a 4, or 4 over 1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. And 4 times 1/4 gives me 1x is equal to -28. Personally, I really like clearing fractions. So in order to clear fractions, we're going to multiply both sides by a number that will allow us to eliminate the fractions. And that number happens to be the common denominator. The common denominator of 4 and 2 is 4. So we're going to go ahead and distribute the 4. 1/2 x times 4, or 1/2 of 4 is 2. So we have 2x. And 4 times 1 gives me 4. 1/4 of 4 is 1x. And 4 times -6 is -24. Then we work with our variable term first. Remember, there's an implied positive in front of this 1. So I'm going to subtract 1x from both sides. And that gives me x plus 4 is equal to -24. And then my final step is to subtract 4. So we have x is equal to -28. So using either method, I get the same solution. And remember, if I want to check my solution, I can plug -28 back in for x and see if the equation is indeed equal. This is your first problem that you're going to do on your own. I'd like you to pause the video and follow the steps here to solve this equation. Your next challenge is to decide if Nemo or Roadrunner is correct. And maybe they're both correct, but for different reasons. So let's see. Nemo says that he should simplify both sides of the equation first and then use properties of equality to solve. The Roadrunner says he should divide both sides of the equation by 2 first because it eliminates some work. What do you think? Solve the problem both ways to see which character is correct. So I want you to write this problem down twice and solve it in first Nemo's way and then the Roadrunner's way to compare those methods. So go ahead and pause the video and try both of those. Sometimes we can use solving equations with variables on both sides with geometry. So this quadrilateral has an area of 10 times x, because we take base times height. So this is 10x. And this rectangle has a length of x plus 3. And remember, our commutative property allows us to write it as x plus 3. And so the length is x plus 3 and the width is 6 centimeters. So the area is 6 times x plus 3. And we want to know what value of x will allow us to have the same area. So the same means that they will be equal. So we have 10x is equal to 6 times x plus 3. Now I'd like you to go ahead and solve this equation. Your final challenge is to describe solving equations to someone. So if you were teaching someone how to solve equations with variables on both sides, what would you tell them? So perhaps you would have a series of steps. Perhaps you want a more flexible way, or create a flowchart. So try to see if you can do that, and we'll discuss it tomorrow.